Is blindness a barrier? No.
Is deafness a barrier? No.
Are mobility, learning, cognitive disabilities, speech impairments and others, or even a combination of them, barriers? No way. Lack of accessibility is.
Welcome to Web Accessibility for All.
Follow the blind. This journey starts now.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Web Accessibility for All. I am Ariel, your host, a front-end engineer and a web accessibility specialist. Today, I want to talk about something small. Every developer knows about it. Every designer has complained about it. And almost every design system has tried to replace it at least once. And yet, when you talk to users, especially users with assistive technologies, it's often the version we didn't rebuild that works best. We are going to talk about why we stopped trusting native UI, what quietly changed underneath us, and why accessibility is sometimes lost long before anyone makes a bad decision.
The high cost of custom select components.
6 months after launch, nobody remembers why the dropdown is custom.
The sprint ended, the ticket was closed, and the feature shipped. Now we are in maintenance mode. A bug comes in.
When I tab through the form, focus sometimes skips the dropdown.
Another bug comes in.
A screen reader user says the field label is announced twice.
Then another.
On mobile, it opens something, but it doesn't feel native.
At this point, someone finally opens the code.
Oh, this is a custom dropdown. Wait, why didn't we just use a select?
The answer comes back almost instantly.
Because selects are ugly, and they look different in every browser. We needed consistency.
And here's the important part. All of that is true. But what nobody said out loud 6 months ago was this.
If we do this, we aren't just styling a box. We're owning keyboard behavior. We're owning the state machine. We're owning screen reader output. We're owning mobile interaction. We're owning every edge case forever.
But then, the browser owned all of that for free. Now, the team owns it. Not because they wanted control, but because CSS stopped where behavior begins.
Accessibility doesn't fail at design time, it fails in maintenance.
And that's the story we need to talk about.
Why CSS can't solve accessibility alone.
At some point in the discussion, someone usually says,
Can we just fix this with CSS?
that question makes sense, because for most UI problems, CSS is the fix. Spacing, CSS. Colors, CSS. Typography, CSS. Layout, definitely CSS. But the drop-down problem keeps resisting.
I can't touch the pop-up. I can't control how options are rendered. I can't change how it opens. I can't make it behave the same everywhere.
And that's the important realization. CSS stops at the edge of behavior. The open dropdown is not just a visual box. It's keyboard logic. It's screen reader expectations. On desktop, the browser owns that behavior. On mobile, the operating system does.
The uncomfortable truth.
So, when someone says,
But it doesn't match the mock.
What they are really asking CSS to do is,
Please, take ownership of behavior.
and CSS can't do that, because it was designed not to.
The maintenance trap of custom UI components.
When replacement feels like progress.
Replacing a native select often feels like a win at first. After sprints of hard work, it is fair to say that the replacement matches the design and looks consistently across browsers. From a delivery perspective, the problem looks solved. But what actually happened is subtle. The team didn't style a control. They replaced the system component. That replacement comes with invisible baggage, keyboard interaction rules, screen reader semantics, focus management, mobile behavior, form integration, and validation. And this is where teams underestimate the cost, because most responsibilities don't show up immediately. That's the trap.
How modern browsers are fixing native UI.
Over time, browser vendors started seeing a pattern. Native elements were being replaced. Accessibility was regressing. Teams were rebuilding behavior they never meant to own. So instead of giving developers more power, the platform did something more interesting. It started removing the reasons to replace native elements by exposing carefully scoped hooks, not all at once, and not loudly, but in ways that changed daily work. Those hooks allow styling without breaking behavior, theming without replacing semantics, visual control without behavior ownership. These changes didn't arrive as a single feature. They arrived slowly, across years. You probably use them already. Focus styles that appear only when they matter. Native file inputs, checkboxes and radios that can be themed. Lists that remain semantic while becoming visually flexible. None of these give you total control. And that's the point. They are pressure release valves. From an accessibility perspective, this is a major shift. It means native controls stay native. Screen readers keep predictable behavior. Keyword interaction remains consistent. Mobile integration is preserved. The platform adapted to how developers actually work.
Native versus custom, the developer choice, again.
For years, the default flow was start with the native select, hit the styling wall, replacing it with a custom widget, fix accessibility later, or not at all. That flow is no longer inevitable. Today, a better default looks like this. Start with a native select. Push it as far as the platform allows. Accept small visual differences. Only replace it when there is a clear, user-facing reason, not because it looks different in Safari, not because the arrow isn't perfect, but because the interaction itself truly demands it. This matters because native controls inherit platform accessibility for free, behave correctly on mobile without extra work, match user expectations across assistive technologies, fail in predictable, debuggable ways. Custom widgets don't. Native controls have a predictable baseline. If a screen reader updates and a native select breaks, the browser vendor fixes it. If your custom widget breaks, your team inherits that emergency. The more time you spend staying native, the less accessibility debt you accumulate, often without realizing it. So the real recommendation is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. Treat visual inconsistencies as a design constraint, not a bug.
Open UI and appearance, base select.
Up to now, everything we talked about might sound accidental. Better focused styles, slightly more control, fewer reasons to abandon native elements. But this shift didn't just happen. There are two coordinated efforts behind it about how native UI should evolve.
OpenUI, the intent.
OpenUI is the conversation. It's browser vendors, accessibility experts, and platform engineers agreeing on one core idea. Native UI controls should be extensible, not replaceable. OpenUI exists because browsers finally acknowledged a hard truth. Developers weren't rebuilding selects for fun. They were doing it because native controls give them no negotiation space. OpenUI starts by asking questions like, which internal parts of controls should be stylable? Where does customization stop to protect accessibility? How do we expose power without breaking platform guarantees? This conversation has finally crystallized into a technical reality. The anatomy of the component is the agreement that a select isn't just one tag, but a system of parts. The button, the list box, and the options. By defining this anatomy, they created the path for the new appearance. Base Select Standard.
CSS UI, the part you actually touch.
CSS UI is where that direction becomes real. It's the slow expansion of pseudo-classes, pseudo-elements, behavioral selectors, appearance-related controls. This is why something important happens here. Most developers will never consciously adopt CSS UI, and that's exactly how platform improvements should feel. They will just style, focus, visible, rely on better defaults, stop hiding native controls, stop rebuilding widgets from scratch, and accessibility improves as a side effect. That's the quiet win. Neither OpenUI nor CSS UI promise pixel-perfect parity nor identical selects everywhere. Their job is not to erase platform differences. It's to make native controls viable again. That's the real outcome.
Accessibility by design, building with the platform.
CSS fails when it makes native elements feel unusable.
And that's the line worth remembering. When developers can't express intent with CSS, they don't argue, they replace. And once a native control is replaced, accessibility is no longer guaranteed. That's why this moment matters. CSS is finally becoming structural enough to keep native controls in place. We can finally stop rebuilding what already works. Thank you for listening to Web Accessibility for All. If this episode helped you look at native elements a little differently, share it with your team. Until next time, build with the platform, not against it. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us today. Subscribe for a new challenge next week. And don't be shy. Leave us a review or ask your accessibility questions online. See you next week for another episode of Web Accessibility for All.